Oh, she put on lipstick.
I did. I put on lipstick.
Okay. Hilary, this paper you've written on healthcare, it's very interesting. Particularly it interests me because there is a lot of critique about the current healthcare system as being an industrial healthcare system. And yet when we think about, well, how can it be different? You know, what's the new paradigm for healthcare? I think that's the essence of what this paper is about. Can you tell me what the qualities are that you see this new paradigm is representing in this paper?
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Thank you for both reading the paper and I think discerning what's at the heart of the matter. Let me start with more of a show or a description as opposed to just talking about the concepts of it, but we'll get there too. So last time I was with Svante Lifvergren, who's the co-author on this paper. I watched Svante in action by being part of the learning platform that he was hosting that particular day in Gothenburg. Gothenburg is in the region where this healthcare transformation is happening. And pretty much like you're saying, the transformation is from more of an industrial, but very costly model of healthcare, like we still struggle with in the United States, to one that really places relationships and trust at the heart of things. So what does that look like? It literally looked like a dozen or so people sitting around a table. Svante was master of ceremonies, and people were drinking coffee because Swedes love to drink coffee. And who was there were healthcare folks, there were physicians, there were nurses. There are also process owners, very important people in terms of bringing these healthcare folks together with their patients. So what we were seeing really was all the stakeholders, or at least representative stakeholders from healthcare, including patients. My God, you know, when does healthcare really orient to the patient?
I have this image always of the doctor and the nurse talking about a patient when they're lying in the bed.
Exactly. And here, actually, one of the questions was, what really happens, or how do we deal with patients' cancer diagnosis? And the patients brought photographs, photo voice, to point out what's life like after a serious cancer diagnosis. And it was no surprise, but extremely helpful in the room to hear that it's mostly about managing the relationship between the patient and the loved ones. Is a lot about how do we take care of the social circumstances. And this shifted then the conversation away from the biomedical type focus on the patient to really remembering the whole part that's there. And in that room also, by the way, were out-of-towners, which I think Svante often uses as a way to do conversations, dialogues, learning from the out-of-towners. What are they struggling with in their health systems? It could be in India, and also as an opportunity then for the folks in Sweden to talk with each other, because often we don't have opportunities to talk across our teams about our patients. So,
is this a sort of an add-on to the biomedical, though? I mean, it sounds like it's going to be expensive to me.
Well, you know, that's the thing. And if you read the paper, it's so exciting. You see how much money has been saved in this. Because by having the patient as an attractor in the system, so that's the language of complexity science, we oriented then around the patient. Well, you know, the patient actually doesn't want to go to the emergency room, which is the high cost stuff. That's like $1,000 a visit. The patient often just wants to talk to the nurse to feel reassured that they don't have to go. And that's you know, a much cheaper thing, where the patient feels good, the nurse or the physician feels like they're in the loop, and we're leaving out the very expensive ER. And so what has happened over the 10 years, the decade of this action research, is that there's been a shift away from the industrial focus, if you will, on the hospital, to using mobile networks. Sweden is a very interconnected iPhone carrying kind of place, where the patient becomes the attractor.
It sounds, one of the things that strikes me about it is that many times when transformations are attempted, there's a lot of cost at the beginning because there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of experimentation needed to try to figure out how to do things right. And then people say, oh, the new way just doesn't work. But one of the things that interested me about this paper is you are talking about a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about a 10-year period, and I think the experiments, it's not one experiment, right? There's many experiments, and inside of the complexity worldview, therefore there's a kind of a diversity, there's an evolution, if you will. And so the positive deviance in the experiments can be amplified, and these learning platforms therefore become key, because now I can learn from what you did, what did and didn't work. And so here, I think at the heart of that is the issue of trust. And so when I talk with Svante, he says, trust is what this is all about. I have to trust you enough to also share with you what hasn't worked, right? So maybe in the beginning, when we're getting to know each other, I want you to know all of what's working, but what hasn't worked is also equally important. And Svante points to the work of Peter Strumpke in Poland, who talks about having little cells of change that go slow enough not to upset people and allow trust to build. And so indeed, we do have this decade of pretty awesome work.
But I think a lot of people want the doctor to sort of play God, right? They don't want to have to do all this other work. They want to have somebody give them the answer. I mean, it requires a patient reorientation as well.
It does. It absolutely does. And maybe that's the final thing we're talking about here, that it's at the heart of action research is learning with stakeholders. And so indeed, this transformation to a more democratic rather than hierarchical relationship between physician and patient, this democracy causes also and asks the patient to step up in a more mature way as an equal, not in expertise, right, but certainly an equal in knowledge about his or her conditions.